Thanks, Elizabeth. Good job.
Thanks very much. SEPTA, the Sustainable Energy Free Trade Area, builds, in fact, on this idea of bottom-up organic solutions to difficult problems. The problem that SEPTA overcomes is a costly legacy of governance and policy failures that have distorted energy markets. In particular, put up unfair barriers to clean energy. 4 particular kinds of problems bedevil energy markets. Externalities, the dirty forms of energy that we use, don't pay a fair price at the pump, whether it's the health or in the environmental consequences of burning coal, let's say, the security implications of using nuclear or oil. We pay for these through the Pentagon budget, we pay for them through lives lost, but we don't pay at the pump. And that distorts incentives and choices in the marketplace. Subsidies explicitly for fossil fuels dwarf those that renewable energies receive every year. And of course, there are trade barriers, such as those to the exports of clean sugarcane ethanol from Brazil to the US that impede the flow. And there are also a lack of interoperable standards and so on for smart grid. What we propose is the SEPTA idea is a bottom-up approach that would phase out fossil fuel subsidies. Now, this is something the G20 is already committed to and should be lauded for, but we would accelerate that phase out. But we would go further, remove all tariffs, taxes on clean energy, including the local content rules that often bedevil entrepreneurs trying to work across markets. And in order to build a scale for new technologies, agree common standards. We're seeing different markets coming up with different sets of protocols, for example, for smart grid or other kinds of clean tech technologies. We prefer the analogy of the GSM, where the European Union took the lead, and you found Europe took a decade's leap ahead of the United States in bottom-up innovation and investment and capital going into mobile telephony. And of course, pricing in externalities is absolutely essential for this. We encourage an acceleration of this difficult but important trend. So who would do this? Here too, the argument is for coalitions of the willing. At a time when we need a necessary talking shop to move towards global consensus. Meanwhile, let's do what works. So build on a G8, G20 commitment to phase out fossil fuel subsidies. That's the right block. Let's build on that. Because we're talking about something that goes beyond merely the environment, it's essential that the finance and trade ministries be involved, and they will be. They'll have an angle on this. That's key. That's when we know that things will happen. Of course, the UN agencies, the Secretariat for Climate, UNEP, the International Energy Agency, repository of great expertise in this area. We'd want to involve the WTO, has done a lot of great work on environmental services within the Doha and earlier rounds. We would want development banks when it looks towards implementation and the implications for developing countries. And standards bodies who often get left out of this kind of conversation. The ISO, for example, or the IEEE, who do very important nuts and bolts work, would be involved. Again, coalition of the willing. This is not in contravention of the global processes. But unlike Copenhagen, Doha, we don't need to wait for consensus to move ahead. The G20 leads, but this would be an open club. That is, it's a club of clubs, and all are welcome to join. That makes it GATT compliant. In fact, we have precedent. In the 1990s, we saw under the Clinton administration a similar kind of approach on information technology that's been very successful. This builds on the G20 vow, as I've mentioned, to phase out fossil fuel subsidies. So we have momentum and commitment at the highest levels. The goal of carbon pricing, something that most serious economists, but also the Copenhagen process advocates. We have the Trade Global Agenda Council, with its own proposals, endorses this idea. They're proposing plurilateral approaches to kind of break the Doha logjam. This is consistent with their proposals. And of course, IP is respected. This is not about giving away technology, tech transfer. This is not charity. This is a way to attract, the only way we're going to solve the thorny climate clean energy dilemma, just to attract private capital, lots of it, including from the developing countries themselves, as James had earlier advocated. So what happens? We want to move fast. We want to target the next G20 summit with this idea. So we urge the World Economic Forum to convene a sort of a rapid action task force, not a group of long beards to write a white paper 6 months from now, but let's get people from private industry, people who would benefit, but also those who may have serious concerns in the room. Let's map out a fast-track strategy. We would ask, for example, the IEA, the Framework Convention Secretariat, to give us an assessment of potential benefits. The WTO, ISO would be brought in to talk about some of the specifics, the nuts and bolts of how to get from here to there, potential obstacles. And as we move forward, the new secretariat would be created within SEPTA for the G20. The powerful idea that motivates this is free trade can be more powerful than state aid in catalyzing clean energy and helping tackle the climate problem. Thank you.
Good, Vijay. Thanks.